Welcome to Trends with Benefits, a podcast by Van Eck with a forward-looking perspective. We explore new ways of thinking about the markets, investing, work, and life. Here's your host, Ed Lopez.
Welcome to another episode of Trends with Benefits. My guest today is Sue van der Linden. She's Senior VP and Wealth Advisor for Bluestone Planning Group at Morgan Stanley. She was also recently named to the Makers Class of 2021. Sue, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, our topic's going to be, it's going to be broad, but generally we're going to be talking about females in finance. I know you're an advocate for females in finance. Tell me a little bit about Makers and this nomination to the Makers Class of 2021.
I am absolutely thrilled to be named to the Makers Class. The previous Makers have all been women that I have either up close or from afar admired, and it's just a pleasure, first off, to be in their company, secondly, to have access to them, to be able to finally, ask all my crazy questions to, and to be with other women who have succeeded in a very male-dominated business.
What are some of the crazy questions?
Did you worry about this? How do you do, because a lot of times it takes a while for firms to catch up with what advisors need. When that happens, you have to kind of figure out the workaround. And it could be anything from how do you deliver reports to what's in the reports to how do you have some of the difficult conversations with people. Sometimes they've not thought about something or put something off, and now their options are limited. And those can be tough conversations to have, especially when you care about your clients.
If we might, let's talk a little bit about your practice right now. How long have you been practicing financial planning?
It's interesting that when I was hired, the person who hired me, somewhat jokingly, but more truth is offered in jest, as they say. And he said, do a plan for everybody. That's where this business is headed. That was 26 years ago. It's taken a while for the industry to kind of catch up with what advisors needed and with what clients needed, but we're kind of hitting critical mass with the planning capabilities that are available across the board. So it's really nice to see those things actually coming to fruition. But yeah, 26 years to be an overnight success.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to start building a practice and getting to a point where you're getting referrals and generating the business that you need to make it really successful. What was starting out like for you? Did you intend on becoming a financial advisor?
I am truly the accidental advisor. I never had this on my radar screen at all. To put it bluntly, my husband went back to graduate school and I was sitting at home at night while he was in class with nothing to do. So I said, fine, I'll go get an MBA. So I went back to GW, got my MBA. And as I graduated from the program, I was being inducted into a business honor society. And the speaker there was from a financial advisory firm. I was fortunate enough to be seated at his table at dinner. And by the end of dinner, he said, you'd be a really good advisor. And I thought, what is he talking about? I have no idea what they do in this business. So not realizing I was cold calling, I started off cold calling every financial services firm in DC and happened to luck on a gentleman who was opening an office. He had a bullpen of 3 and was looking for number 4. And I was a flyer. I was the only one with an MBA. I had no background in financial services, but, as I explained to them about how my father and I used to sit around the dining room table on Saturday morning, working through the books of my newspaper delivery business and getting everything in order to go to the bank and buy the CD that I was going to invest in. They said, well, okay, wait a minute. Maybe she's got something here. So they took a leap of faith, and I'm eternally grateful that they did.
What do you think was that quality that that he identified in terms of you would be a good financial advisor? What do you think is that ultimate characteristic?
I say this jokingly, but I'm serious. They told me it was the fact that I sent them a thank you note.
Oh,
yeah.
I guess my mom was right. I should be sending out more of those.
Your mother was right. The handwritten note gets you so far. I went to the effort to actually acknowledge the time that they had spent with me and to be appreciative of that and to ask for their feedback. And they said, nobody's ever done that. And we're looking for people that are doing things a little bit differently. She definitely did it differently. So let's give her a shot.
And so today, what does your practice look like? Do you service a particular demographic? Are you doing planning for everybody? Who do you tend to work with? And perhaps when do they come to you in their financial life?
That's an interesting question. Actually, I've really not relished the idea of cold calling. I remember sitting at my own dining room table, having dinner with my family, and the phone rings at 6:30, and I thought, somebody else trying to talk me into a timeshare. The idea of cold calling, being on the other end of that, making the call, just didn't appeal to me. So I did it as long as they made me. And as soon as they stopped making me, I stopped doing it. I found that I was far more effective working directly with accountants and attorneys because I could take an estate planning attorney's technical language and an accountant's technical language, and I could turn back to the client and translate that into terms that they understood and that made sense to them. I really started out building my business working with accountants and attorneys who were looking for a good, solid, reliable, planning-focused place to be able to send the clients they had who needed that service. I didn't set out this way, but I found that women as a group of clients responded to what I was doing, taking that technical language, taking that jargon and stripping it back down to regular English and talking to them in terms that, I didn't come across as trying to impress them with my vocabulary. I could break it down into terms that really made sense and related directly to their life and what they were trying to accomplish, as opposed to, well, your child becomes a legal adult at the age of 18. So if we title things this way, then I would come back and say, okay, if we use this kind of an account, we can pay for your kid to go to an Ivy League school with next to nothing in tax impact.
Do you tend to work with more female clients, or are you working with couples as well?
We work with both, but there is a very heavy concentration of female clients. Part of that is, 25 years in, we started with the couple, and there's either been a death, which tends to be the husband, or there's been a divorce. We've just kind of aged in place with our clients. And as they've become single or widowed, we've stayed with them.
When they come to you, they're coming to you at a point of financial change, perhaps, and that's when they're seeking out help. Are you working with many people that are just far ahead and realize I really should be planning for something? Nothing's going on right now, but I should be planning for something.
Well, you get a couple of different inflection points for people. The typical ones are the life events: birth, death, marriage, divorce. Sometimes it's an inflection point of, I just watched my best friend go through losing their spouse and being completely unprepared. I don't have anything on the table right now, but I'm not sure I'm prepared if I have to go through that. So it sparks them to take action and to say, I don't necessarily want to change things, but I need a roadmap. I need to know we know what we're doing here.
And are you doing anything for the next generation of investors, working with existing clients and working with with this idea of the next generational wealth transfer that is underway?
So, if I may, I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask, which is, what are we doing about financial literacy? Because that's a very big deal for us. And since it isn't being taught in the schools, we find that our clients' beneficiaries and our clients' children generally don't have the financial literacy they really need in order to either be able to make smart decisions for themselves or to be able to handle the inheritance they're likely to get. A lot of the work we do with beneficiaries and with children is in the area of financial literacy. And we actually have a financial literacy program that starts with kids as young as elementary school age, so that on a really developmentally appropriate level, we can start teaching kids about money and how to use it as a tool.
What does that entail, like the financial literacy? Are we talking about understanding different legal structures or basic, just the very basics of what is a stock, what is a bond, or how do you...
Back up. What is a check?
Yeah.
How do I write a check? In a way, we've made the world a lot easier with things like online bill pay, but we've removed the fundamental understanding of, okay, you stuck a bunch of numbers in a window on a computer and you paid your dog sitter, but how did you actually do that? Well, you wrote them a check. Okay, what do you have to write on a check? And how does a checkbook work? And how do you keep your balance? And how do you balance the checkbook? So, it goes back to things as fundamental as that. For instance, people can pay their kids an allowance or pay them for doing chores around the house. And then the child gets a chance to understand, okay, this is $1. This is what I can do with $1. I can spend it. I can save it. I can invest it. I can donate it. How much should go into each of those buckets? How do I choose? I might decide to put money into the donate pile for a while until I've got a more significant amount. But then how do I choose a charity? And how do I choose what to invest in? And should what I invest in be simply a money-making effort, or should it reflect some sort of larger cause? So, for instance, one of our very early clients said, my grandmother and my mother and I all smoked for years. I quit, but I know the health effects it's had on me, and it killed my mother and my grandmother. So if it's all the same to you, I'd really rather not invest in tobacco stocks, investing with a different purpose. Now that has evolved, and you can apply being what's referred to as an impact investor in a whole lot of different ways. Who's the portfolio manager? What kinds of companies do they invest in? Do those companies simply avoid doing bad things, or do they proactively do good things? And how do you want to build your portfolio?
You're finding clients coming in with questions like that?
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
They can't quite articulate it the way I just did, but they're coming in and saying, I've heard about climate change. How can I invest either in climate change or to avoid companies that cause climate change? How does this work? How do you evaluate things to say they either are helping or aren't helping, particularly with all of the social issues that have come up in the last year? There have been a lot more inquiries about companies that pursue social justice issues or companies that just don't supply those that create problems in that arena.
So the main topic for our discussion today is females in finance, of which I feel wholly unqualified to be moderating a discussion about. But perhaps, from my perspective as a man, maybe that would help give some perspective and broaden the audience for discussion around this and understanding, and help broaden the understanding of everything. Coming up in the ranks in finance as a financial advisor, did you find many other women in the business? Did you find that being a woman was an obstacle for you, either, generating business or working with prospects?
I never found being a woman in the business to be a problem within my firm. It was always just a challenge of being able, could I make the human connection with the person I was talking to? And some people are just easier to connect with and better to connect with than others. I do feel like I was quite often on point. I was the only pregnant advisor in my office when I was pregnant with my daughter. That caused a lot of head scratching because, well, we've just never dealt with a pregnant advisor. How do we do this? People went out of their way to do the right thing for me, but it definitely did not come with a user's guide.
Do you find that enough is being done to help incentivize women to come into the business? Do you think it's an area of the economy of this industry where females should be looking to grow their careers?
It's a phenomenal business for women in particular. Unfortunately, as an industry, I don't think the industry makes it easy. What you find is that the women who get into this business are a little more determined than your average person to make their career successful. They're also multitasking a lot. The multitasking they do, juggling work and family and home all at the same time, is something a lot of their male counterparts have a difficult time relating to because they have a spouse at home that takes care of the home and the kids. I've been a working mom the entire time I've been a mom. So all three of those things have always been on my plate. It's just not something that the male advisors really comprehend.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm not very good at multitasking. So how do we get more women in finance?
Well, I'm actually going to throw it back to you, sir. It takes the men in the business to have a moment of, wait a minute, I would want the same opportunity in this business for my daughter as I would for my son. Lean into that a little bit. Take some action to help make that happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you're bringing one of your children into the business, but if there's a female advisor, be a resource for her. Answer her questions. Be a mentor to her. Don't save your assistants for the usual suspects.
Do you feel that people tend to have inherent biases, whether they realize it or not? Perhaps there's hiring managers out there that don't intend to discriminate, but perhaps they just end up hiring people that they're comfortable with or relate to. And in some cases, maybe that just happens to be another white man, for instance.
Yeah, everybody has their biases, and most of them, by definition, are subconscious. What we really need is for people like the hiring managers to make the effort to say, okay, wait a minute, this is a candidate that we haven't seen before, but maybe it's our biases that have kept us from seeing this candidate before, and I need to give them an opportunity. There's a great expression that says, talent is ubiquitous, opportunity is not. It's the people like the hiring managers who are in a position to really move the needle on that and provide the opportunity to the people who haven't had those opportunities in the past. You have to make a concerted effort to bring in someone who looks different, who sounds different, who brings different ideas to the table, because that difference could be the thing that appeals to a client that's never going to respond to the people that you've hired previously.
Are we going to have to pull women from other industries to help build out the ranks in finance and create new portfolio managers? I mean, I don't know, is there enough being done in schools to help funnel women into this wonderful business that we're in?
I have taken the STEM moniker, and that's supposed to drive women and girls into science, technology, engineering, and math. I personally throw another M on there. Science, technology, engineering, math, and money. And we have to start by telling girls early on that they're good at this. I had lots of subliminal messages when I was young that the world was trying to tell me, you're a girl, you're not good at money. You're a girl, you can't do business. You're a girl, you're not good at math and science. If I can take the old adage, if somebody tells you you can't do something, do it twice and take pictures. I majored in chemistry in college, and I do this for a living. Girls are good at math and money. Fortunately, I had a father who was very much kind of the accidental feminist. I never heard anything from him except, yeah, you can do this. Go do it, and go do it really well. I took those messages and was able to use that as my motivator to get the science degree, to do a good job in math, to do well with money, and not let those outside sort of noises really have an influence.
Yeah, I think that's really so true. I just heard a news report this morning talking about research that showed a lot of our issues or perceptions of ourselves were really baked in something in the formative years of our youth. Something happened, and maybe it didn't really affect us in a super traumatic way, but there was some trauma there that down the road kind of affected our personality somehow. And I think kind of what you were saying is start young, encouraging people when they're young with more positive messages as opposed to things that they can't do. What do you think is the one thing that men can do to help women in the business?
Okay, first of all, you get the prize for asking that question. So often promoting women in business, the focus turns back to the women to say, well, what are you going to do? Hang on a minute. The business field and the finance field are largely populated by men. I find that there are a lot of men who are just unaware. They're not ill-intended. It just never makes their radar screen the stuff that women are dealing with that becomes a barrier to them getting involved in the world of finance. I would say the first thing is just be a little bit more keenly tuned to what are you seeing women in business struggle with. If you have daughters, encourage them. And if they're older and in the working world already, have a real discussion with them about, okay, I'm not going to talk to you as your dad, just be a coworker for a minute. What's life like being a woman in a really heavily male populated industry? And just sit back and listen, because it will be eye-opening, the things that they share with you.
This awareness of women in finance and other social issues has been growing over the last few years. Are you hopeful for the future of women in finance?
Well, I'm an optimist at heart, so I'm always hopeful for the future. But I think one of the biggest drivers of women getting involved in the business is, number one, the movement to planning, because women are a little bit more attitudinally disposed to planning. We go to the grocery store with a shopping list. We go out to take the kids for back to school shopping, and we know how many pairs of pants and how many dresses and how many pairs of shoes do we have to have. That's not necessarily a quality that financial services in general has really brought to the table in a meaningful way until now. Hopefully, as the pandemic subsides and we get back to more of an in-person doing business kind of format, the women who've left their jobs will be attracted into coming into this business, because you can solve problems, you can help people, you can have a really good time doing it. But it's definitely something that we need to make a concerted effort to do better.
And, since this is a podcast about trends or fads, what's one long-term trend you see playing out over the next year or several years?
I'm seeing that being in the same location isn't necessarily a requirement for everything. It is for some things, but just as for instance, there's a music school here in town, and it used to be that everyone very dutifully showed up at the school at their assigned lesson time and took their music lesson with whoever the teacher was. Well, now my daughter's been taking flute lessons from home by Zoom. And the plan is for her to be able to continue taking flute lessons when she goes to college. Now, turns out you don't necessarily have to be in the same room with your music teacher. I have a friend in another city who's been taking piano lessons remotely. Some of these self-imposed limitations are being exposed as self-imposed limitations. There are, other aspects like, okay, if we're going to do surgery, we kind of have to have the doctor and the patient in the same room. But I think even that may dissipate to a certain degree. You'll wind up being able to get consultations with people who are experts in particular conditions who may be on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, in fact, I think there are some kind of remote robotic kind of surgeries that can happen. But it's amazing where we are, right? I mean, I love that aspect of what has happened, I guess, in the last year of being able to be remote, being able to be where you want to be and still communicate with people, still do business.
Yeah, it still feels kind of Jetson-like to me, but I'm getting used to it.
So, okay, you ready for our speed round, trend or fad?
Ooh, okay.
Dinks, dual income, no kid couples, trend or fad?
Trend.
Men's makeup, trend or fad?
Fad.
How about adult kids living with their parents, trend or fad?
Trend without some significant changes.
And lab-grown meat, trend or fad?
Hopefully that's a fad.
We'll see. There are a number of private companies really trying to make it happen and perhaps come to market.
Yeah, that just kind of creeps me out. I don't think I could eat that.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll see how that plays out. Sue, thank you very much for your insights and the discussion. I really appreciate your time. What is the best way for people to connect with you, find you?
Best thing to do is to either do a Google search for our website, which is Bluestone Planning Group at Morgan Stanley. And the other is they can email me directly, which is just sue.vanderlinden@ms.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sue. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trends with Benefits.